Welcome back to Cult Movies. I'm Michael Copner, this is Buddy Barnett, and here's our special guest, Jack Hill, writer, director, producer, and, well, we want to talk about the greatest cult movie of all time, Spider Baby, and let that lead into all the other pictures. But because you don't tie yourself to any one genre or style of filmmaking, do you?
No, it's kind of a new thing to me to be called a cult movie director. You know, when you make a movie, you don't set out to make a cult movie. It's something that happens over a long period of time. So it's a great surprise to me, but I'm enjoying it.
Well, here you are on the set with Lon Chaney Jr. making Spider Baby. It was probably Lon Chaney Jr.'s one of his greatest roles of the 1960s. And you wrote this picture, you gave him this role?
Yeah, I wrote came up with the story in about a week and wrote the script, I think, in 2 or 3 weeks, and shot it in 12 days, and never expected it to be anything more than just a quick summer quickie, but here it is 20-some years, 30 years later, 32 years later, and it's finding a whole new generation of fans, which is a surprise to me, but certainly is a pleasure.
It is out on videotape now, isn't it?
It's been out on videotape for some time, and it's coming out this fall on DVD in an original director's cut edition. When the distributor originally distributed the picture, he cut about 6 minutes out of it, which may or may not have been for the better, but anyway, it's been restored for this special edition.
Wow, that's great. And it still plays in theaters?
Well, you know, I've been invited to film festivals all over, not all over the world, but in Europe, and quite a few to introduce the film. So it's finding an audience outside the country as well, which is very nice.
Spider Baby had a really interesting cast. Could you talk about some of the people that were in the movie?
Well, of course, there's Lon Chaney, and then Carol Omart, who was, as you probably know, you trivia freaks, she was like an up-and-coming young star that Columbia Pictures' Harry Cohn thought was going to replace Rita Hayworth, and she did a couple of movies that more or less bombed and kind of faded away. And this, we called her for this picture, and she read the script, and she was just absolutely delighted to do it, and talked about, can this picture win an Academy Award? And we were going, I know, come on. And the other members of the cast were the 2 young girls. Beverly Washburn had been a child star. She had been in Beverly Washburn's on the left there. And she was in Old Yeller, and she had been at the age of 24 when we did this picture. She'd been an actress for 24 years, whereas the other girl there, Jill Benner, this was her first film she'd ever done. She was 17, never done anything before, and the 2 of them just played off each other and worked together like old pros. It was really quite miraculous. And then Sid Haig there, the fellow with the head shaved, was my favorite actor. He started his career in my UCLA student film. This picture was done about a year after I had left UCLA. It was my first full-length feature.
Wow. How was Chaney to work with?
He was wonderful. He was really great. He was just very much loved the script, and he loved the girls, and he wanted so badly to do a good job, because he gave him a comedy role, and he had very, very seldom, I don't remember him ever being in any other comedy role, and he was very good at it, and he wanted to show how good he could be. And he was a tremendous alcoholic at the time, as well known, but he wanted so badly to do a good job in this film that he stayed virtually on the wagon for the whole 12 days at great stress to himself. I think he would allow himself a half a glass of beer in the afternoon to get through the day, and then he was fine up until the last night, but that doesn't show. And he did a great performance.
Wow. Also, one of the cast members was Mantan Moreland. He had a smaller part, but a very
Mantan Moreland. He was wonderful. He was he'd been famous for playing Charlie Chaplin films, and he was a vaudeville comic in the beginning of his career. And he was he loved the chance to do this movie. He was kind of bitter that the civil rights movement had really put an end to his career, because they were not casting black actors in those kind of roles anymore, and so there were no roles for them, because they hadn't moved to the point where you would find black actors playing judges and lawyers and doctors like you do today. And he was kind of unhappy about that, but he really enjoyed doing this film.
You had a kind of unusual twist with him where he comes in, and and for years you've seen him in comedies, but and he's funny in the movie, but then he's immediately, you know, killed off. Did the Psycho have something to do with that? Was that kind of a nod towards Psycho?
This was in my way a kind of a takeoff on Psycho. The idea that that you would have a character that's identified with comedy in people's minds, and then so you think he's going to be the comedy gag, and then you have him brutally murdered, and that would be a shock, and then it was.
I think his ear was chopped off too.
Yeah. Some people have said that's where Quentin Tarantino got the idea for. I know that Quentin was a very big fan of this movie too.
Okay, another one of the horror greats you worked with is, of course, Boris Karloff on several different occasions. The Terror being the first one, of course.
Yeah, I didn't really work with Boris. I worked on that film after Boris was no longer involved on it. The whole production of that film took about a year, actually, and it started off with 3 days of work with Boris, and this is a famous story that everybody's heard. And then it took about a year of shooting and throwing the footage away and shooting more. And I ended up with the job of taking the footage that had been shot and writing a new script to go with it, and doing a lot of pickups and inserts. And it was gradually assembled over a long period of time and turned out to be a very successful movie, to everyone's surprise. But I worked on Boris later in 1968 in his the final years of his life, on the so-called Mexican horror films, as you know, I'm sure.
You wrote and then directed 4 pictures to be shot back to back?
Yeah, that's something you would have to learn. You can only learn that working from Roger Corman, where everything is so crazy. But the problem was to write 4 scripts where all of Boris's scenes could be shot in Hollywood, because he was not allowed to go to Mexico because of his emphysema.
Yeah.
And the scripts would be written in such a way that all of his scenes could be done in Hollywood and other scenes in the same sets, and then those sets would not appear in any other part of the picture. And yet you'd get the feeling that Karloff was all the way through the movie, even though you only saw him for a few scenes. And it was such an ambitious undertaking on the part of the Mexican producer, a foolish undertaking. Everybody thought he was crazy, including me. And not long after we finished shooting those scenes, he died of a heart attack, which was no wonder. And for many years after that, I didn't know the films had been finished until somebody told me they were available on video.
How was Karloff to work with compared to Lon Chaney? How would you compare the two?
Yeah, it's interesting because Lon was kind of jealous of Karloff. He felt that Karloff was no better actor than Lon was, and Lon wondered why he was so much more famous and successful. Well, the fact is, of course, that Boris didn't drink. You know, it would never occur to Lon. But Karloff was a very, very nice man, and he knew he was dying. He had emphysema. And the way he put it to me was he just wanted to go out and harness, and working took his mind off of his illness, and he really enjoyed doing it.
Getting back to Spider Baby, could you give us your thoughts on why you think it's become such a cult classic? What is it about the picture that...
Boy, I don't know. People come up with theories and they ask me about it. Just recently I was appearing at a convention where several young teenage girls came to me and told me how it was their most favorite film and how much they loved it, and I feel they sort of identified with the family in the picture. And other people tell me that one fellow said that whenever he gets a new girlfriend, he runs the film for her, and if she doesn't like it, then he knows that there's not going to be a relationship. And people have all kinds of relationships to this film. It astonishes me.
Wow. Your original title for Spider Baby was actually called Cannibal Orgy. Right?
Yes, Cannibal Orgy, or The Maddest Story Ever Told. See, there was a movie called The Greatest Story Ever Told at that time, and so I thought this is my personal joke. It was a lousy idea.
By the way, was there cannibalism in the movie?
There is some, but it's done in good taste. It's off screen, actually.
Hey, actually, we probably have a clip from Spider Baby. Would you like to look at it right now?
A clip, or I think it's
maybe
that sort of trailer.
It's
yeah,
more
sort of.
trailer.
Yeah, it was a trailer that was actually created.
The actual film trailer.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Let's have Kathy and Kevin run that, and we'll look it over.
American General Pictures imprisons you in a bloody web of terror. Spider Baby has the seductive innocence of Lolita and the savage hunger of a black widow. Spider Baby will give you nightmares forever. No man that loves her lives to love another. Her sweet kisses engulf you in a bloody web of horror. Spider Baby will thrill you, then kill you. Starring Spider Baby and Lon Chaney. For the horror thrill of your life, see Spider Baby from American General Pictures.
We're back with writer-director Jack Hill. And you mentioned Roger Corman earlier, and you had quite a few assignments with Roger, didn't you?
For a while I worked with him on doing kind of odds and ends of things, yeah.
Like shooting extra time for some of those theatrical pictures when they played them on television?
The one I did was a film called The Wasp Woman, and it was quite some years after the picture had been made, and he was selling it to television, and it needed about 15 minutes of extra footage. So my problem was to find an actor who was in the film and was still alive, and write that much footage and shoot it. And that's the training that you get with Roger Corman.
Did they give you any guidance in a thing like that, or just throw it at you and say, do it? And it was
Roger just said it needs 15 minutes and shoot it.
Wow.
So I created a sort of an introduction to the movie, and I added in a few pieces where I felt the story could use a little additional support during the course of the film, and that's the version that's released now, as I understand.
Some of the areas, well, like the Foxy Brown series, are a radical departure from the horror films, but probably are they the most successful pictures you've done? Or
yeah, the most commercially successful, although, well, no, not really. The first picture I did for when Roger Corman established his company called New World was the Big Dollhouse, which was a huge, phenomenal success to everybody's surprise, mostly mine. And that's the one that introduced Pam Grier. And then I did another film as a sequel with Pam, and then when I got the assignment from AIP to do Coffy, I felt that she was the only actress who could do it, and so I wrote the script for her, knowing her personality, and it turned out to be a huge success. I made a star of her.
did you discover her for the part?
Well, you know, if anybody can be said to discover anybody, it was her first film, other than a walk-on in a Russ Meyer movie, for obvious reasons, but those are not the reasons I hired her. I felt she just had she had no experience at all, but I felt she just had a remarkable kind of authority and presence, and I took a chance in giving her a leading role, and she ended up stealing the picture and even sang the title song eventually. And so when I had a chance to do Coffy, I felt she could really break through, and she did.
Coffy was one of the biggest hits of that year, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Well, it was number 12 on the annual list of top grossing films, and it was AIP's biggest grosser, yeah.
Wow. And then Foxy Brown came the year after. It was a sequel.
Yeah, which was very
much
unusual for a so-called blaxploitation movie. It crossed over into a general audience and showed that it could be done. And I think that's one thing that I think helped kind of bring black characters and black lifestyle and black subject matter into the mainstream of films.
And then one of your next big pictures was The Sorcerers. And was that the most recent one that you've done?
Yeah, that was, if you can call 1981 recent. But yeah, it was a sword and sorcery movie. I did it because I wanted to do a movie that would look big and spectacular, and unfortunately the picture was taken out of my hands after it was finished for reasons that had nothing to do with the movie, and was cut way down in terms of budget and cost and everything, so I took my name off it as writer and director. But it turned out to be a very successful movie anyway.
Well, we've been asked different times, why did Jack Hill get out of the motion picture business? And I wondered if The Sorcerers had something to do with that.
Well, partly, only because it was kind of a discouraging episode, and it kind of cooled me off on the business. But I had never really been, you know, ambitious as a filmmaker, and I just worked because the films that I made money, so I would get a chance to do another one, and then I would take off on a long vacation. And not really, that's not the way you build a career. You know, you're supposed to get an agent and step up, and instead of stepping up, I just did something else that I thought would be fun. And so eventually I just decided not to do it anymore for a while.
Do a lot of people recognize you now for Foxy Brown and Coffy? Are those two of the pictures that
Mostly,
you get
yeah.
a lot of
I think
respect for?
largely because of Quentin Tarantino's constantly advocating them and bringing them back into consciousness, and those are his two favorites actually of the genre. So that's helped a lot.
Actually, could we show the trailer of Foxy Brown? Would you like to
Foxy
watch
Brown,
that?
yeah,
Sure.
that's a good trailer. It's cute.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's have a look at it. Kathy
Sure.
and Kevin will roll that.
When Foxy Brown comes to town, all the brothers gather round, 'cause she can really shake 'em down. Foxy lady, Pam Grier, that one chick hit squad who creamed you as coffee, is back to do a job on the mob as Foxy Brown.
Sounds like a public menace.
Sure do.
A chick with drive who don't take no jive. She's sweet brown sugar with a touch of spice.
If you see a man anywhere, send him in, because I do need a man.
And murder if you don't treat her nice. Have no fear, Pam Grier is here as Foxy. Foxy Brown. Rated R.
Welcome back with more of Jack Hill.
By the way, in Foxy Brown, that seemed like the same character in Coffy. Why did you have a different name?
Yeah, well, you see, that was supposed to be a sequel. In fact, the original title was Burn, Coffy, Burn, and it was actually with the same character. But the sales department of the studio pronounced that sequels were not doing well, so they don't want any more sequels. So they just simply changed the name of the character, gave it a new title, and shot the same picture. It was just the way they used to work.
Wow.
And oddly enough, that maybe partly because of the title, but that's become the more popular cult favorite over the years, even though Coffy was a much more successful film originally.
Also, one of your most popular pictures was Switchblade Sisters. You want to tell me a little bit about that, and then...
Yeah, well, it was just re-released a couple of years ago, thanks to Quentin Tarantino. I suspect that he had seen it on video and always wanted to see it on the screen, and so he got Miramax to re-release it in the theaters. And so that was really very nice, being able to see it again in the theaters. Now it's out on Laserdisc and DVD and everything else.
And that kind of like brings us up to what you're doing at this moment. What's your newest project?
Yeah, I'm working on a project now that I've been trying to get done off and on for 20 years. I wanted to do for 20 years, and now it's finally coming together. It's fully financed, and we're about ready to start making offers to stars. And it's a kind of a, it's laid in Tangier in 1938, and it's a kind of a adventure comedy. And it's got Nazi spies and British Secret Service and gun runners and a mysterious woman and Spanish Republicans and carrier pigeons, and it's got twists at the end of every scene, so you never know what's going to happen next. It's just a really fun script. It was written by a friend of mine, and I did a rewrite on it.
Wow, that sounds like a lot of fun. I
Yeah.
hope it comes out really well. We're going to look forward to seeing that.
Yeah, good. Yes, it'll be great. It's a wonderful script.
Any last words you'd like to say about Spider Baby? You want to tell us your final
Spider Baby?
thoughts? Or anything. We're obsessed with Spider Baby here.
Spider Baby. Well, yeah. The thing about that is that for 20 years, I thought the picture was forgotten, buried, and nobody would ever see it again. And it was only because I found out that there were pirated videos around, I was able to acquire the negative and put out really first-class quality videotape on it, and now it's coming out on DVD, and so that was really a great pleasure when you think something is lost forever, and particularly because of Lon Chaney's performance.
Wow. Well, anyway, I guess we're out of time. We want to thank you for coming. It went by really fast once we got to the
It's my pleasure.
to the meet here. Thank you.
Okay, my pleasure. Anytime.
Well, thank you.
It's been great fun.
And now we'll be back.